So Simon Jordan had a really interesting interview, and he had some observations with regards to Eddie Hearn, Conor Benn, and Chris Eubank Jr. So I wanted to share my perspective, and we're going to go through 5 ideas. So the first idea is the Eddie Hearn coward call-out. He praises Eddie Hearn's business build, but brands his handling of Conor Benn, particularly with regards to the failed test, as cowardly. Now, for those that don't know, Eddie Hearn, he backed Conor Benn. He backed him. And it seems the right thing to do to back your fighter. But here's a question. Should you back your fighter if your fighter is in the wrong? And then when we talk specifically about Conor Benn, was he in the wrong? Was Eddie too loyal to Conor Benn? And is there a level of loyalty? Is it like a 1 to 10 and Eddie Hearn was on a 10 when he should have been on a 7 or on a 5? And I think to answer this, first we need to define loyalty. So loyalty, quote, is a firm and constant state of faithfulness, dedication and allegiance to a person, an institution or a cause. When we talk about the context of Eddie Hearn and Conor Benn, it's a person, it's a faithfulness, dedication and allegiance to that person, and that person was Conor Benn. And here's another question. Is loyalty important in boxing? Because if loyalty is important in boxing, then it was important that Eddie Hearn was loyal to Conor Benn. But at the same time, the boxing public or the casual fan seems to assert that Conor Benn was in the wrong. But was he in the wrong? And people will make their own minds up with regards to that. But loyalty is not a bad thing. And loyalty, I don't think, is a cowardly thing. However, when you look at life through the filter of objective right or wrong, I can understand Simon Jordan's perspective. And then the second idea is the personality, the titles and the economics. Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn made millions, perhaps tens of millions, without world titles. And it's the concept that he's discussing, that has boxing's business model completely decoupled earnings from achievement? Did Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr., did they just inherit their dad's legacies? Let's make a distinction here. Chris Eubank Jr. had his own career. He is his own person, and he has had many different fights. Conor is younger, but he also has his own career. So that may not be the total objective truth, but to say that they didn't inherit anything from their fathers would also be incorrect. I would add this caveat. Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn gave everything in the ring. They gave everything. When things got hard, they could have quit. And by not quitting and by committing, they showed passion and they showed character in the ring. And I think from that perspective, we should respect that, because they gave us an absolutely sensational night in that first fight. And then the third idea is the Deontay Wilder regret. Simon Jordan admits he got carried away when he told Wilder, "You're going to answer." That's a command as opposed to a question. And this is referring to the infamous argument that Simon Jordan had with Deontay Wilder. Now, for some reason, Tyson Fury seems to be a trigger for Deontay Wilder, and this has led to some incredible allegations. And from my perspective, I would say that the hostility is unfortunate. They fought 3 times in the ring. They had some really intense fights. And unfortunately, this bad feeling from Deontay Wilder, it seems real and not manufactured. Simon Jordan triggering Deontay was good promotion. It was good promotion for the fight at the time, which was Derek Chisora versus Deontay Wilder. But is all promotion good promotion? When things become genuinely personal, they can feel distasteful. Remember, they can feel distasteful. Doesn't mean it is distasteful, but it can feel like that. Reflection, of course, and this is what Simon Jordan has showed, is a part of efficient human development. So when we reflect and we say we've made a mistake, that's a good thing. So Simon Jordan reflecting on what I assume he thinks is a mistake is a good thing. Of course, we can contend whether it was a mistake or not. But ultimately, the question would be, would he repeat that behavior? And then the fourth idea is the And this is really important, the fight of financial ruin. So, Simon Jordan talks about, the pension structures, the education, so fighters don't go broke post-fight career. And here's such an important question. Whose job is it to protect fighters from themselves? Is it the board? Is it the promoter? Or is it nobody? Here's my perspective on this. I always felt that there should be some type of education on protecting boxer finances. And to me, this education, it should be mandatory. And it could be anything. It could be anything from like like some virtual classes, or just something that gives the boxer education on paying taxes and keeping money for retirement, and also understanding that the boxing financial window is a very small one. Even if you make the millions, which is only like the top 1%, you have a small financial window, and you need to make the most of that. But you need to be able to deal with the taxes, and managing money is actually a difficult thing to do. And it's a difficult thing to do because a lot of people are unable to do it. So that leads to the question of, how do we implement this education? How do we implement it effectively? It's all very well telling people that they need to manage their money, but we need to give them the tools on how to manage their money. And should promoters have greater responsibility over fighter finances? This is such an important topic, because a lot of fighters, even fighters that make a lot of money, which is a small minority, in the end, they end up with nothing. So it's important to develop a culture, to develop an educational system to try and prevent that. And I think that this is essential, because we've seen the stories of fighters going broke, and it becomes huge news. But it seems that people are invested in reporting the stories, but are people invested in the solution? And it seems that it's a good thing that Simon Jordan is bringing this awareness to the table. And then the final idea is his perception on Amir Khan versus Devon Alexander. And according to Simon Jordan, this was excellence. Jordan calls it actually a display of excellence, quick hands, wonderful movement. And the one thing that we forget, I think, as British boxing fans, is that Amir Khan's hand speed was elite. It was absolutely exceptional. I can't think of anyone who's as fast as Amir Khan. Of course, he had that weakness of what they call the chin. People would say that Khan had a bad chin. So he had elite speed, he had good power, but he definitely did not have an elite chin. It's important to recognize that despite that, Amir Khan operated at world level. He operated at an elite level. And in a way, you can kind of say, well, if he didn't have a good chin and he was still able to operate at a world level, at an elite level, that says a lot about Amir Khan as a boxer. It says a lot about him in a good way. And let's remember that the resume of Amir Khan is extensive. The CV is extensive. Marcus Maidana, Devon Alexander, Zab Judah, Danny Garcia, Canelo. I mean, he actually fought Terence Crawford as well, Kell Brook. He fought so many boxers, and he was a great British boxer. And it's important to not just remember, because I think sometimes there can be a narrative bias to just remember the bad things about a boxer. And in the case of Amir Khan, a lot of people remember his knockout defeats. But it's also important to remember that he was a multiple world champion, and that he had great feats, and that he was a great British fighter. Think of this. The Simon Jordan interview goes beyond headlines and forces bigger conversations about loyalty, responsibility, and legacy in boxing. Now, promoters, fighters, and governing bodies all shape the sport's future. Excellence brings rewards, but it also carries consequences. In boxing, success is measured not only by victories, but by the decisions made outside of the ring. So that's the end of the video. Now, I'm trying to build a digital boxing community. And that means I'm interested in your thoughts, I'm interested in your perspectives, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, press like, hype, and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. as always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.